Buying a home is more than just a transaction. It's a journey. And for many, it can feel overwhelming, confusing, and even a little scary. But hey, you're not alone.
And then I've specialized in seller finance that entire time. And so I've done lots of different kinds of transactions, like contract for deed, all-inclusive, lease options. I do some vanilla real estate too, but I really like digging into the nitty-gritty of seller finance. Honestly, the best way for you to learn a lot about real estate really quickly is probably going to be title, because you get to be involved in so many transactions really fast. I would say probably, I don't know the exact numbers, but at least a third to a half of them being seller finance. Oh, there's so many reasons, Ryan. I think the most common thing I see with the reason people get into seller finance is you can get into a house cheaper. You don't even have to have 3% down like you do with an FHA, let alone 20% like you do if you want to avoid mortgage insurance. You can put anything down as a down payment. I've had people put boats down as a down payment before. No mortgage company is going to do that sort of thing. If you can't get a loan, but you're still making $10,000 a month, you can do seller financing pretty much without problem. That's a beautiful opportunity for the seller who's really in a pickle. And the investor gets all the benefits of that low interest rate mortgage and any equity that the seller currently has in the home. So the seller up front can charge usually up to 10% additional on the current market value of the home, just because of that fact alone. But then you're making monthly about $1,000 a month just from selling this home to your buyer. You don't have landlord responsibilities like you would if you rented it out and had tenants. And you get to reap these benefits for pretty much as long as you want, depending on how you set the terms, or until the buyer refinances. So the biggest thing you probably that you hear everybody say when they talk about seller financing, if they're wary of it, is the due on sale clause in most underlying mortgages. This clause, as you guys probably know, just means that the mortgage company can call the loan due if you end up selling your property. That includes on seller finance. That can be a worry for some people, but I want to tell you guys why you don't have to worry about it very much. Hey, these guys sold their property. Yes, they're making all their payments on time, and they have been for the last 15, 20 years, but I think we should take it away from them so that we can get that property. It just doesn't really happen that often, because they're going to make a lot more money just by servicing the loan than they will trying to get the property back. So depending on the kind of seller finance transaction you do, you have different layers of protection. So I'm going to start with an all-inclusive, because I think that's a little bit easier for people to understand. So the seller can't sell the property behind the buyer's back without the buyer being notified because of this notice of interest. And the buyer can't sell the property and not pay off the seller because the seller's name is still on the property. So if your buyer defaults on a contract for deed, and this one's great for sellers, you do what's called a forfeiture. And this usually takes 30 to 45 days to get the buyer out of the property. It's a lot more simple than a foreclosure. You don't have to send it to a trustee sale. You can actually just take the property back.
I've heard that sometimes it's not as good for buyers. Lease, it's better for sellers, because most people that do a lease option don't end up exercising their right to buy. And so if they put $10,000 down as a deposit to have that thing, typically the seller just ends up pocketing that because that person doesn't always buy it.
Most buyers don't know that they can sell their lease option, which I think is a tragedy, because you don't have to lose your $10,000 that you put into this home. You just have to know the right people to sell it to. Seller finance is a great option. Instead of having to put $60,000 or $70,000 or $80,000 down or more sometimes, you don't have to go to a hard money lender. You can use the seller's mortgage. But then also, sometimes I've seen people, like if a seller is in trouble, an investor will buy it from them on seller finance, or just traditionally, and then sell it back to them on seller finance as a rescue to get them a little bit more money. So I guess that's just another risk you run as a seller, is if you do eventually end up taking the property back, the buyer may have done some wild stuff to it. Also, unless your buyer's doing meth in the property or burns it down or something.
And so if you can get things before they hit the market, you can typically get a better deal.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, so what I will tell a lot of sellers to do, especially if this is their first time doing seller finance and they need to be able to get into another home after selling their home on seller finance, I'll advise them to talk with a loan officer to figure out how they can structure the seller finance deal in order to put like the monthly payments towards their new qualification, like their current loan application.
Because I don't have a down payment otherwise. Most people don't have a down payment. It's all tied up in that house, right?
No, I'm kind of thinking, we talk to a lot of sellers that are homeowners that have a low interest rate, and they're like, oh, I don't ever want to move, or I don't ever want to sell because I've got this low interest rate. So if somebody does want to move, but they want to keep that low interest rate, tell me a little bit more.
By selling your home on seller financing, with receiving those monthly payments, you can effectively transfer your interest rate over just because you're making enough money from your previous property that it's as if your interest rate was a lower amount. And I have lots of resource for anyone interested in getting into seller finance. So, yeah, let me know. I want to help you succeed.